think it's the first one he's ever missed.
Well, good evening, everyone. The time is 5:02 p.m. and the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees are now convening a workshop on Monday, April 15, 2024. A quorum of board members is present. However, note for the record, Mr. Norwood will not be able to join us this evening. This meeting has been duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Any public comments, Becca? None. There being no public comments, we'll move on to the board workshop.
The board, Gabby Nino, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and Mike Morgan, our Assistant Superintendent for Operations, is going to come to the table. So we're here tonight to do an update on Goal 4, developing a district-wide culture of value, support, and growth amongst all students and staff. And we had two key progress measures in this area. One is around professional learning, and the other is around barriers to student participation in extracurricular activities. And we're going to also hit on what was a key progress measure last year around our behavior framework. We're going to give you some updates on implementation from this year. And so with that, I think I turn it over to Gabby first.
Yes, all right, we're going to jump in. Melinda already set us up for the topic of our conversation this evening. But Mike and I would really like to just start with the discussion. We have Goal 4 on our slide up here, develop a district-wide culture of value, support, and growth amongst all students and staff. And we just want to elbow up with each other and talk for a couple of minutes about what does that goal mean to you, what's embedded in it, and then we'll just have open dialogue about that. All right? So you'll just elbow up. What does Goal 4 mean to you?
Well, you know, how much I've looked at that, more first thing comes to mind, more teachers, administrators, parents.
I'm sorry, can I listen? Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
I
feel lonely down there.
District-wide culture, and culture to me always means how we do things. How do we conduct ourselves? What's important.
Is it typically around discipline?
And the fact that we stress the importance of growth for students and staff, we touch so
It's the professional learning piece of that that's really come out in our listening sessions this year.
I think about
And in our survey, we're doing our staff survey again, just in terms of needs around professional learning and feeling equipped to do our job. Yes, in the area of discipline, but in general, that's an area that's why we put a key progress measure in there on professional learning, because the discipline's died down in the listening sessions.
I think just us being members of the Board of Trustees,
but the need for professional learning.
in reality, our constituents are kids, although they don't vote.
Right.
So the kids are the ones that we owe the utmost responsibility to, okay? And that can be reflected in your culture. If you're not showing that you care about this world of kids, I mean, we're always talking about key progress measures and how these kids do it. What are they doing? Teachers doing what they need to do. Are we supporting the teachers so they can change what they need to do?
Let's take about another minute and then we'll share out together.
I don't think that's right. Now that doesn't always line up with what you said. You don't, if you're doing things, if you're not addressing issues, you gotta do the full circle for sure.
And it's about everything we do. We're always conducting, we're always communicating with administrations, we're always communicating with teachers. What's important to you? What do you need? What do you want? I mean, I know that I do that anytime I say that. I mean, maybe it sounds like lip service to them, but I really do care.
No, absolutely.
If you're coaching, right? It's easy to identify it. It's bad to know.
It is really hard to interrupt, but if you'll wrap up the thought that you're on, that'd be great.
But it's the first time we really want to go with this. Yeah, so I mean, it's the first thing.
So just for the group that you were huddled up with, we all just share out some of the big ideas that came from your conversation around the meaning of Goal 4.
Well, we were talking about the fact that this Goal 4 has many layers. It depends on which lens you're looking through. If you're looking at a student lens, that could mean anything from race to educational opportunities. If you're looking at it from a campus lens, it could mean your campus is a little bit different than mine, and maybe they have opportunities that I don't have. Or if you're looking at it from a teacher's lens, it just could be lots of different meanings depending on the lens you're looking through.
Absolutely.
You're gonna have to repeat the question.
Just any big
Manual's
ideas
got
that
my
came
hand.
from y'all, because it's hard to wrap up when you're really engaged in conversation.
It is. So I've had the sort of what is culture conversation many times, right? And the way we kind of settle it in my paying jobs life is we say like culture is the behaviors that you accept, right? So not necessarily like what's on the poster on the wall, right? The culture is the behaviors that you actually accept, right? And you want those two things to be as closely aligned as possible, right? And so, we want people to feel like we want them to be here, right? Like the culture of value, right? I want you to feel like we want you here, right? And that we care about you, and that we support you, and that we are doing the things that we need to do so that people feel that way, right? So what does feeling valued actually look like, right? What do you have to do for somebody to feel valued? What do you have to do for somebody to feel supported, right? What do those things look like? So when I think about this, right, and as it relates to us, like, what's the framework we're putting in place, right, to allow us to do that, right? And then how do we follow up on it to make sure that we're actually doing it, right, and get the result that we're looking for, so that the gap between, what's on the poster and what's actually happening is as small as possible, right?
Very powerful. How about you all?
Well, we've been teachers, and so that culture of support is a big deal. We remember that, remember being supported and not supported, so we know how that feels, and we know we could probably speak to specifically what did make us feel that way or what didn't make us feel that way. And then, Melinda sits in a lot of listening sessions, so she gets to hear the difference in people's voices and different campuses and how that goes. And Aaron was talking about the lens thing, because I want to see it always through a campus lens, but seeing it through a district lens is a kind of a different challenge.
So when we were talking about this conversation today, we tried to think of as many things as possible, but also how to simplify it in the most meaningful way. And I can tell you we discussed each of the different things that you all are talking about here. One in particular being how layered Goal 4 is. It's one of our it's the goal that calls out both students and staff in one goal. And so there are lots of layers to that. And you're totally right about we want to be able to see and feel every single day that our actions and our behaviors align to what we talk about and our vision, values, and beliefs. And as I was eavesdropping, you all talked about there are moments in time that you can remember. You still remember it today from your experiences when you were a teacher. So as we work through this presentation today, I hope you see connections to each of those comments that you made together, and we'll intentionally try to pull on those as well in how we've structured the conversation. Because it is so layered in Goal 4, and we do have a KPM around professional learning. We also have really invested in trying to ensure that we understand the degree to which each and every student is connected in Belton ISD in some of our work this year. And we've also been implementing the behavior framework that was articulated last year. So we're going to try to connect the dots of all three of those in this conversation today. And of course, as always, please stop us at any given time. One of the very first KPM under Goal 4 is that 75% of teachers will report learning opportunities were provided to support their growth and development by June 2024. This is what we call a lag measure that has been measured through our employee engagement survey over time. but we can't wait to get that information back to then decide how we're going to support people. It's too late, right? And so we've been working to build as many feedback loops in as we can so that we can just in time get some information from teachers about, and any staff, not just teachers, about any disconnects that are there, and hopefully make some more of the memorable moments that stick with people forever. This goal in particular, or that KPM in particular around professional learning, really transcends several of our goals. Yes, it's embedded into Goal 4, but it is absolutely one of the most important things that we can do in Goal 3 to ensure that each and every employee feels valued. It is a recruitment and retention strategy to have high quality professional learning for people aligned to their needs. So I pulled some strategies for you all across our goals that help connect the importance of professional learning across goals. The first one being that we need to build and implement a comprehensive system for professional learning that is driven by adult standards and around expectations for high quality learning that would meet individuals' needs. We have multiple frameworks that have been rolled out that you all are familiar with over the last couple of years, one being our instructional framework that we dug into last time, another being the behavior framework, and then also the competencies that we've articulated for world-class employees. So if we have professional learning, we are working to align it to those frameworks that guide our beliefs around specifics. And then when we talk about ongoing structures for feedback, we absolutely can collect survey data after any session that we provide, but you don't always get everything. The whole story is not told in the surveys always. You need to sit down eye to eye with somebody, shoulder to shoulder, and really hear their voice in conversation. So we have focus groups as well, ongoing needs assessments, and just learning feedback from observations and being present. When we started this school year, we are encouraging surveys at the end of professional learning, but you can imagine how much happens across the system. Because there's so many different places that learning happens in campus and district, to be able to consolidate that information and make meaning of it was incredibly challenging for us. And so we've worked towards putting the same survey attached to all of our professional learning so that we can get some more consistency in the feedback. There's a few structures, and this is not all, but I really wanted to highlight today some of the structures that we most often see in professional learning and that you'll see across our system. And then we'll talk about specific to behavioral learning, the impact of those. The first bubble is community-wide and role-alike. At the beginning of this school year, we really started thinking about what are the learning experiences that every campus needs. And Mike will dig in a bit to that, but all of our teachers across the system had foundational learning and groundwork to support our classroom expectations, our building expectations related to behavior in the classrooms. So that's an example of a community-wide professional learning, but we've also put in place structures to support specific role-alike learning. So all of our dual language teachers take part in role-alike learning. We embedded fine arts professional learning for our fine arts teachers this year in a role-alike setting. So those are some of the big structures. And then in the middle, we have choice learning sessions. These primarily happen in after-school learning sessions and events like Recharge, where somebody just says, this is learning that I'm interested in and I want to tap into. And then we also have learning cohorts that have been happening that would be a year-long book study, a smaller group of people that are coming together in our system to study the same concept, topic, specific need that they have to invest in growth. They may happen in things like year-long book studies, but then we also have short-term series of learning experiences. And we've had a couple specific to behavior that we're going to walk through a little bit today. So for the remainder of our conversation, because Goal 2, especially that professional learning goal, is so widespread across content areas, across themes of roles that we have in common, we wanted to dig in deeper to learning specifically related to implementation of the behavior framework and share with you all what some of the feedback that we're hearing around that post-delivery.
So Gabby, real quick, can you go back?
Yes.
So are you saying in this slide that these are examples of structures that we offer professional learning, not specific just to behavior.
Yes.
But in general, we either whole group, we do role alike, we have choice sessions, we can do book studies, we have a series that someone could participate in. This goes across no matter the content.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So these are just professional learning structures that you will see in our system.
Okay.
Now, as we dig deeper today, we have these structures in place for behavior-related learning as well. And so when we talk through, you know that they're going to fall in one of these structures, and we'll explain what that is.
Can I ask you real quick about book studies?
Uh-huh.
Is that voluntary?
The only
that
book
work?
studies that we have currently are voluntary book studies. Now, what I'll say, like thinking forward, we want our system for professional learning to be so well known that if a principal is sitting side by side with a teacher, or a department leader sitting side by side with somebody on their team, that they know the availability and can also make recommendations. But currently, they are choice. And we've had some good
And
participation.
they
in
come
them.
out of, I guess, what people have said they are interested or want to learn about, not just handed like, here's some
Absolutely.
good stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we also had a KPM around people having learning goals or learning objectives, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming that's carried forward this year, right? And so you talked about the 74% or 75% of teachers reporting that they've had learning opportunities, right, being the lagging indicator. But sort of the leading for that is, well, do people still have the goals, right? Are they setting goals? And to tie that back to the culture, if they're not setting goals, are we allowing that to slide, right? Or are we following back up and holding people accountable for having set those goals, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, when we put that in place, and I know Todd could speak best to that, but for all of us, like with all of my team in setting goals for the year, that became part of our process, and then HR supports that by pushing out those processes. But every employee in our system should be setting goals. Leaders set a leadership goal, but also a learning goal and a professional goal.
Yeah. Gabby, can you go back to that previous slide?
This one?
Yeah. Janet had asked you about the book study and some of that, well, that's optional, right?
Mhm.
Which ones are that you implement and people have to participate in?
So those are most typically the community-wide or role-alike learning opportunities.
Okay.
Like we have calendar days in our schedule for professional learning. And the one that we're going to dig in deeper on with behavior-related, every single campus in our district provided learning around the foundational behavioral systems that we have in place, and that was required for all employees. So there are certain that are required. Then I'd modify that a bit to look at recharge. Everybody in our system was required to take part in recharge. It was 100% from all levels of the organization. You went to engage in learning that day at recharge. However, you had choice on the sessions that you choose there. So that's really about how we're building a culture of learning that we value that learning in our system.
Is there something different for fine art teachers versus math teachers versus science teachers? Is there something that's required in each one of those disciplines?
Yes. So when you see the beginning of year, I'll tell you, reflecting back, we have not always been intentional about including those role-alike times. For example, the fine arts teachers. So Mr. Zilke is expressing, and our teachers are expressing, how much they would crave time together to have a professional community of fine arts teachers that get to collaborate together. So this is really the first year that we had that intentional time for them to engage with their role-alike group.
Because I remember, Melinda, you and I went and visited, gosh, I can't remember which school, but there was a math teacher that was really doing something special that would allow, in this situation, it would allow that math teacher to share what that math teacher's doing in classroom that's been so effective. Is this something that comes into play?
So I'm glad you brought that example, because I was trying to stay in one lane when you asked about the book studies, but that is a beautiful example of a learning culture that has grown here based on a math book study. 2 years ago, a teacher is implementing a new practice called the thinking classroom, and The engagement is crazy high in the classroom. This teacher's trying something out with an innovative practice, and quite honestly feeling a little bit alone on an island on her team because she was trying something new. But there's some benefits to the structures that we've built in, which Ben and Denise are in the role that I was in then. But I was able then to connect principals because I saw the same kind of things being attempted across campuses. And organically, that teacher started leading a book study alongside one of our content coordinators. And that's one of the largest book studies that we've had, and it continues to spread across our system. So yes, we see these promising practices in classrooms, and then it becomes our job to get them connected with other people. My dream, honestly, is that our professional learning system is so clear that when we see that positive practice in a classroom, that we have that recorded in like a promising practices library, so that anybody can call and say, here's what I'm working on, where should I go to see that? So yes, and a lot more to your
But we
question.
also, in Recharge, for example, have teachers leading professional learning for other teachers and practices, and they've applied to be able to present at Recharge. And then, teachers want to hear from other teachers. They want to talk to people who are actually implementing, who have tips and tricks on strategies. And so a lot of our Recharge sessions are actually offered by our own staff.
Any other questions there?
I think you've alluded mostly to what you were just talking about, but the people that are facilitating this, would you say that it's predominantly district staff? Are you bringing in people, teachers, or is the facilitating piece of it, is that a challenge for any of these structures?
So what I can tell you is that most of our sessions, and I'm zeroing in on Recharge right now, 90% of our sessions are facilitated by our staff, which I want to celebrate that. I can tell you it causes some anxiety building it because you need to get all those sessions populated. But this year we grew by, I think we were almost 80 sessions more offered than, and I feel like I want to make sure that I get the right number to y'all, but we had a significant growth in the number of sessions offered by our staff. Now, with that said, there are times that we bring in individuals from organizations that we consult with or we contract with. There is expertise and research-based practices and instruction and leadership that we bring in to help facilitate. I'll highlight one today as we go further, but there's also opportunities with a book study that upon leadership of learning, some of our staff can earn certifications to be leaders of that learning as a part of bigger organizations as well. All right, I'm going to hand over to Mike, and as a reminder, we're going to talk about learning structures today to support implementation of behavior framework, and most of them are through the lens of these structures.
So we've started this discussion about November of 22. I think this is our third workshop to give some sort of update or some type of discussion around behavior framework. Today, because of the professional learning element, this seemed like a very appropriate time to give you guys some follow-up on kind of where are we right now, taking the 4 domains that were developed in our framework, who's been doing this work, and what do we kind of see, what are the big things we've tried to accomplish this year, and where are we as far as gathering data back and seeing how effective they've been, and where do we go from here. So I will say these are going to go, we're going to hit the 3 or 4 biggest one of each, and then we're going to pause and try to gather some feedback and discussion around these. So one of the areas is in prevention. As Gabby mentioned earlier, there has been some additional trainings and some additional expectations that we have brought forward based on the feedback we had gotten during the process of developing the framework. One is for students. One thing we found, and one thing that not all students were having a clear discussion around expectations. What do we expect on our campus? What do we expect in our classrooms? So we asked this year each campus to have grade level or large group assemblies at the beginning of the school year where campus administrators, teachers, and however they had it set up campus to campus, where they have that discussion with students around, this is how we behave here, this is what we expect from you, this is what our expectations are. And by all accounts, those have been good. In the larger campuses, it's a little more challenging. So they have to maybe do more than grade level. They may have to split grade levels up, but every campus had meetings with their students to kick off the year and discuss the expectations. Also, as Gabby's already mentioned, and I won't go into a lot of detail, all campuses had the Tier 1 training for teachers around classroom management, student behaviors, and kind of what the expectations are, and some tools on how to manage those situations. Some of the level alike training kind of jumps into the next bullet. That's the training for interventionists, special education teachers, counselors, campus administrators, those staff that routinely deal with students that may have some of our more or most challenging behaviors. They get some additional training around Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, and really how to handle those situations and really provide the needs that those students have. And then Gabby mentioned Recharge as well. There were a number of sessions, most peer-led at Recharge that were focused around classroom management, student behavior, and tools and strategies that can be used in those processes. Looking at intervention.
So Mike used the language of Tier 1 on the previous slide. Tier 1 is really what we provide for all students. And on occasion, you may have a child in your classroom who's experiencing a greater degree of difficulty with whether it be academic skill, like learning those skills, and also behavioral needs. Just because a student has what I'd call an outlier behavior doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong per se. They need some help and some reteach and some guidance. And so we put some new supports in place this year for Tier 1 supports with behavior specialists in our district. We previously only had our behavior coaches consulting with teachers who were in special education with some of our higher degree needs. But we've tiered those supports this year so that a teacher in the classroom with Tier 1 supports can have access at any time to a behavioral coach that can come in and help them problem solve around a specific student. And while I explain some of those things, we're going to pass out a poster that lives on every campus. We're only showing you one for Tier 1, but we have one for Tier 1 supports, Tier 2 supports, and Tier 3 supports. So a teacher, if they are having some challenges at any time, can scan this QR code and connect with one of our behavior support specialists that we have in the district. We do have flow charts that help teachers in making decisions related to behavioral responses. And that's great. It's a decision-making guide, and we want to use them and make sure that we're using them with fidelity. But if we think about that professional learning lens, sometimes I need somebody to stand alongside me and help me problem solve and figure out what's going on, even with some simple tweaks. And so what we have in front of you is what supports might look like if I'm in the classroom, I'm delivering instruction, and Gabby, for some reason, is really struggling to follow the expectations in class, and I'm trying everything I know to. I can have somebody come and stand alongside me to help coach through that.
Is this somebody on your own campus, on each campus? What is this?
We have district behavior support specialists, and they support all of our campuses. And we have one that's associated with Tier 1 supports, one with Tier 2, and one with Tier 3 supports to try to distribute the load, for lack of a better word. But this is somebody off of campus that comes to support.
Okay, a couple more questions.
Go for it.
Real super quick. When are teachers given this information?
So these are posted. They're in lounges. They're in places where teachers gather. And then we also have, like we talked about the groundworks training that everybody got across campus. Every campus also has a team that is their emergent tree team that comes together to problem solve around processes and behaviors on their campus.
And that's not just for special ed?
No,
Okay.
no, it's not. Now, I will tell you that our systems before reinforced that it was just for special education. And that was well intended. No, this is just a process of becoming better.
Okay. I guess my question is just to make sure that they know this is available, that it's not just posted or somewhere, but they know what it is, what it means, how they truly do have access to it, and they should use it if they need it.
Absolutely.
And so then the next question is, how often does it get used?
So I can follow up with some of the data on that for you, but your point is so well taken. I remember kind of bragging about us putting these in place, not meaning to be arrogant, but I was excited that we had restructured supports. And I mentioned this in a conversation, and the campus that I was with had no clue what I was talking about, right? And so that is reflective on us. We just got to continue improving our communication and making sure that people know that they are available for them. And it's our first year with it. So very valid point. That was earlier in the year. I can tell you that in our mid-year conversations with campuses, we got some really strong feedback about how meaningful having this support is for teachers and for campuses as well. Everybody is doing their absolute best trying to problem solve, and just having that outside perspective is very helpful.
But we can get the board data on how often
Absolutely.
that's been accessed.
And could you also include response times? I'm just curious, if I'm at the beginning if I'm a teacher and I'm at the beginning of my instructional period and this happens, how long does it take before Tier 1 support is on site?
That's a great question. So this is not intended to be like I need help right now in this moment, come down the hall and help me. That would be support that's still provided by the campus. This would be, I'm continuing to have challenges with Gabby in class, and I want to problem solve, and I'm just not being able to. And so I can reach out, and then somebody will schedule it.
So more like a scheduled support.
Yes, it's more of a scheduled support.
Just behavioral issues. This is what we're addressing, period.
Yes, with this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's super useful if they know it exists, right? But super useful also if they've heard some success stories, right? So thinking ahead to next recharge, right? Like, are there some success stories that we can take from this year, right? And have teachers share those success stories, right? Take the stigma away from asking for help, right?
Absolutely.
And really share that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I'm going to ask this right, but you'll get what I'm trying to ask. Do teachers need to get permission? That's probably not the right word. Or does campus leadership have to know that they are reaching out for district help, or that?
That's a good point.
I don't know if I'm asking that
No,
right,
it's
good.
or if there's a repercussion for asking for help when their leadership
Absolutely
isn't
not.
blindsided.
So there's no repercussion for that.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I would say that that's one of the beauties of this, that it makes learning accessible to all of us. Now you'll see multi-tiered systems of support. So just like academics, we have meetings that happen on campus to come together as a committee with teachers, counselors, principals to problem solve around some of the behaviors that children are facing as well. And it may be that committee that would include campus leadership says, you know what, let's access one of our coaches. But we want this to be available to anyone, anytime, so anybody can scan the QR code.
How do you get over, like Chris was saying, how do you get over if let's say you're a first-year teacher, and you've got 4 or 5 classes, and then you're accessing the QR code each time because you've got problems with the kids. I mean, how do we make sure that teachers want to use the system, as opposed to saying, I better not do that because they're going to think I'm not doing my job, or I'm not effective, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. One, I think it takes time, and us rolling this out and grabbing those success stories or pockets of excellence and building that culture. If it's okay, we all are working through goals. I also would add that strengthening our support for new teachers, and so our touch points with them help us learn those things to a greater degree. Last week we had a meeting with our new teachers, and one of the facilitators of behavioral learning was walking through what's called verbal judo with them, and it's de-escalation strategies through strong communication. And a new teacher shared, man, I wish I would have known about this at the beginning of the year. Is there any way you can come into my classroom and help me see what I'm walking through right now? And that coach or the support specialist was like, absolutely, let's get the time scheduled. Now that's one story. It's a success story that I'd love to see that teacher and coach leading sessions at Recharge next year. That I accessed this structure and it transformed my leadership in my
How
classroom.
many do we have? Do we have
That was
one
my question
person?
to stop. I was about to ask that.
One person?
Get out of my mouth.
Yeah, we have 3 serving in that capacity right now. Yeah.
How long has this been going on? I mean, this is really cool, okay?
This school year.
This school year, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking, wow, who came up with that? That's a pretty good idea.
Well, and to your point about this person saying, I wish I had known that when they have, in service when they start the year, that whole week. I mean, these things some of this stuff could be super useful in their preschool, in service that they have to do.
So it had started, how this structure, though, really got put into place after school started. And I can tell you, I'm really excited about having this. And it would be so phenomenal for us as a system to say, we can't keep up with the supports that we're providing now. But yeah, it was really just rolled out this year.
It doesn't take that first layer of support out in terms of like the principal and the assistant principal and instructional coach. That's that first layer, and they do mentoring programs on their campuses for beginning year teachers. So some of that support happens just naturally in principals being in classrooms, assistant principals being in classrooms, instructional coaches. And so, this is, I've had campus principals being very excited about this because there have been some needs that are complex and a little bit more than even that they maybe feel completely comfortable with being able to help support. So Christy Chandler's an example. She's really appreciated and really has valued that support. So I've heard good things from campus principals. It's also, we're just getting started. It doesn't mean it's a magic wand and they can go in and fix challenges in classrooms, but they really are there to coach and help guide and give suggestions for good strategies.
Yeah, strategy tools. Teachers just always are, I think, appreciative of a new tool that they could use that they didn't know about in regard to behavior issues.
It's just another part of that support and value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
what was the answer? How many do we have? For one for each campus, or?
No, for the district.
For the
we have three
district?
right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you, I think one of the greatest challenges in front of us is the question about who knows and accesses it. Because historically, we have had individuals in our district available to support when we have very challenging behaviors. Oftentimes, the way that feels is you get to your wit's end, and then somebody comes in to provide coaching and support, and it feels like, I already tried all that, and you're telling me to do again. So one of our greatest challenges is making sure that there's awareness up front so that I start trying early intervention strategies instead of getting to my wit's end, and then it doesn't feel supportive. It feels like you're telling me to try things that I've already been trying.
What made you guys as an administration start this? I mean, what prompted this?
Well, I can tell you,
Framework.
Yeah, when the framework was developed and we're with our leadership team talking about system needs, at the end of last school year, we proposed adding the positions for the support specialist. Then after that, we have a phenomenal team that's cross-departmental. The MTSS support team includes our special education staff. It includes our counseling team. It includes our student services team. It includes our academic intervention team. And that group together said, okay, we're planning tiers of support for academics. How about we have these roles that we tier those roles as well? And so it's really our team that, and all of our teams that created this system. And now we've just got to go deep with it.
I mean, it sounds like a great way to address maybe what we were talking about at the end of last school year, right? We were talking about having a great behavior framework, right? But it didn't seem to be reaching the classroom, right? And so how do we bring those two things closer together? And it sounds like a great way to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting started on it and feel promise for the future.
And I think one of the things that's encouraging about this too is it could be, and it very well is in some cases, one-to-one coaching or one-to-one support. It could also be a campus sees a trend going on and our teachers may need some help, support, and you could do a training for your whole instructional team or your whole campus too. So these supports could be put on for at the campus level too, and not just at the individual teacher level. So that's another way it could be lived out and maybe impact more than just one classroom or one teacher as well. I want to go to discipline a little bit. Discipline is one of the areas where we knew we had gotten a lot of feedback coming out of COVID in listening sessions and survey data and just in our discipline data, that just student behavior was a concern, and part of addressing that student behavior is getting more sound on expectations. It's also giving teachers tools to handle that in the classroom level where it doesn't escalate to a more serious offense, but in some cases it does. And so kind of the work that's been going on this year that really started last summer, we wanted to give you a kind of an update on where we are. As we examined all those data sources, we kind of found three things that we felt like we needed to work on. One, that we weren't always consistent in how behaviors were defined. So what might be inappropriate physical conduct on one campus, that may be something that's a whole other thing. That may actually be fighting or assault on another campus. So were we consistently defining behaviors the same throughout our system, K-12 or elementary, secondary? Second is that were we consistently applying consequences, and we found that in some cases we weren't. So we knew we had a little work to do around applying consequences consistently. And then the third one was did we need to, we felt like we needed to get the right people in the room to recalibrate our consistency guidelines so that we are speaking better, pretty much the same language, and we are applying consequences more consistently. So that's what a lot of the big work has been done over the last summer. And so as we moved into this school year, and as we stated, we started the school year off with campuses having those grade level meetings and talking about those expectations and some of the things that we found so far this year, some of the takeaways. So we've monthly, when our APs meet with our student services and our principal executive directors of school leadership, one of the things they do is they dig into the discipline data, and we try to calibrate, and we try to go ongoing month by month to see where are the areas that we feel like we've tightened down and where are the areas that we still have more work to do. And so some of the takeaways from the first semester, they've dug deep into the first semester data, that we do feel like that in a lot of cases we have seen the consistency, meaning as you look campus by campus and you see instances of certain disciplinary codes, they do seem to be more appropriately coding and providing consequences for those behaviors. We have seen that the collaboration between campus administrators has increased dramatically. So having those monthly meetings, talking about what we're seeing, trends in discipline, it allows us to have discussions around, okay, so we saw an uptick in this behavior this month. What exactly is that meaning to y'all? Let's make sure we're all talking about it. Let's make sure we're all approaching it the same way. So that's been some immediate. We do coming through the rest of the year. We want to continue to engage in data. We'll have a whole other semester of data that we can analyze and apply. We'll also have listening sessions wrapped up. We'll have student surveys, parent survey, staff survey this spring too, where we can see have we made gains in some of these areas, and we'll be able to come back into the summer as we plan for next year and determine where do we need to go with this, where do we still see some inconsistencies, and where have we obviously made progress. And then we also feel like there needs to be a big push this year to make sure that students and parents are even more aware of our expectations, but also around what some of the consequences of behavior are. Sometimes we have to deal with a real challenging situation and a mistake might have been made or a behavior occurred, and then when we're meeting, it's like I didn't know that would be the consequences for that. So making sure, especially for our more serious offenses, that parents and students are aware of what those consequences may be if the expectations aren't met and if challenging behavior occurs.
I mean, we still live in a community where, even though we've got 3 high schools, everybody knows if you did something over at one high school and it got treated one way, and you did something at a different high school and got treated, like, everybody still knows. Like, we're not big enough that, the high school is its own thing. So, I mean, I think the consistency piece of this is really huge. Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, this is one of the things I get phone calls about sometimes, right, is, well, wasn't handled like that over there. Like, oh my gosh, yes. So, I mean, we're moving in the right direction. Yeah.
And a lot of hard work. Like I say, our APs have shouldered a lot of this, but I think that there's been opportunities for them to have ownership in it, and they need to have ownership in it because they're the ones handling these, they're the ones talking with kids, talking with parents, and performing these investigations. And so we really want to give them the best tools that we can to do their job well, and then have people in place that can offer support to them if they need it. So that's something we really want to get better at moving forward. And like I say, we'll, at the end of the year, we'll analyze the full year data. We'll look at all the perceptual data that we've gathered, and we're going to find some things that we need to get better at. And we'll, I think, starting off the school year with some campus by campus meetings around discipline, behavior, and supports. And then for our new to Belton and new to the profession, we're going to do some additional training before they go. So that every campus won't get the identical training every year, but we do want to make our new to Belton and our new to the profession get a little more detailed training on this before they go back to their campus.
Mike, how does all this improve behavior? As I'm listening to you talk, ultimately that's the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you never want teachers leaving BISD because they say, well, these folks don't do anything about behavior. We've got too many behavioral issues. I mean, isn't that the ultimate goal, is to improve that?
It is.
Right?
I see it as really kind of threefold on that, is giving teachers, building skill in teachers that they can handle those things in the classroom before they escalate to bigger problems. I look at it from a safety standpoint, is do we have good practices in place of supervision, and where we're at those areas where the most challenging behaviors might can occur, and maybe heading those off just by adult presence where they don't happen in the first place. And then honestly, by when those more serious behaviors occur, everyone has to realize there has to be consequences for that. You know, we need it to be consistent, we need it to be fair, we need it to follow what our code of conduct student handbook says, but there has to be consequences whenever decisions are made that aren't within the expectations that we've set out. So that's a challenge. It's been a challenge for the 29 years I'm in, and you know, unfortunately bad decisions are made sometimes, and we've got to get as tight as we can about handling them, as Chris said, appropriately, but also consistently across the district. And it's you know, it's not something we're 100% on. We've got to get better at it. So.
I mean, I can imagine if I'm a teacher in the classroom and I'm having difficulty challenges or behavior challenges, that it might be difficult to say, I need help, right? I get that, but we've got to know that we've got to make sure everybody knows that this is a professional skill that's part of the trade that you know you develop over time, and it's okay. Like, we are here to kind of help develop that skill set, and those conversations are just fine.
And I love your suggestion of having stories where teachers who have done it themselves can come and tell other teachers do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I often will visit with people who are working through behavioral challenges. We exist to teach and to support children in their learning progression, right? And if I'm a child who struggles with reading, it's not disruptive to the rest of the world. And if I'm a child who struggles with math, it doesn't feel like it does if I'm a child trying to figure out how to manage my emotions or my behaviors in a community environment. So that's one of the things that makes behavioral challenges a little bit more difficult to navigate, because you feel it and you see it. Whether you're a teacher or a student, it feels like all eyes are on you when you're working through things. So another layer to the framework, just real quickly, is that social emotional learning that I was kind of just embedding to. But one of the strategies that we put in place at the beginning of year was making sure that on every campus there is scheduled time at every grade level for social emotional learning. And we are guided by a curriculum with our counseling team. That curriculum did not necessarily have a year at a glance pacing guide for our staff around the lessons that they would teach. And this year, our counselors, well, at the end of last year, worked together to develop a year at a glance. And they used it in alignment with our competencies. So as we began this year with critical thinking and perseverance, those competencies were moved up front in that year at a glance to align with the other big work that we have in our district as well. And then we've also embedded teacher and student feedback loops associated with that social emotional learning. I will tell you all that this too is a step forward for us, making sure that time is scheduled in our instructional day. For the most part, you could see that at our elementary schools, but we've made sure that it was a part of the secondary schedules as well. They have used Tiger Time. As we've been implementing this, you can't get the feedback until you implement, right? And we are hearing from both teachers and students that there's a need to adjust the lessons for more engagement. And so I do want to highlight that while we've put them in, there's absolutely needed growth for us to make sure that this time is engaging and meaningful for all of our students. But that was a growth for us this year.
I think the term social emotional learning is not understood by a lot of people. Right? So, I mean, when I think about it, I think about how do you treat other people and how do you treat yourself? Right? I mean, how should we be talking about it to make people less scared of the term? Right? I mean, can I talk about it as simple as I just did, or do I need to change my definition?
I don't think your definition is off. I think, if we think about our journey of the graduate competencies, they're really very aligned to this as well. It's around how do you communicate in a way where you can be heard, and how do you hear other people, the empathy piece of it, how we collaborate and what that looks like when we all have difference of opinions coming to the table. And so a lot of it is very aligned with our journey of the graduate competencies and really helping students. We don't all come to the table with all of those competencies developed. And so, how do we teach those along the way, knowing that how we handle that piece is impacting the academic performance, it's impacting the discipline piece of it. And so it's just to help students learn and how to regulate behavior and emotions and those kind of things. I don't know why it's scary for some individuals. It's not about asking our teachers to be guidance counselors, but it is about teaching the standards that the state's identified in, how do we help students so that they can collaborate and communicate and work well.
Cooperation, making
Right.
it happen, right? We are children of the 70s.
Yeah.
We grew up with Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street and all of the things that taught us social emotional learning without that term.
Right.
Yeah.
But we were all taught as very young children. That was a very big part of childhood development from preschool on, was teaching kids how to get along and how to share and how to be kind. It's not any different today. It's just this term is, I don't know.
So let me wrap this up just a little bit with what we're hearing. You could hear a thread of learning through each of these different elements of the behavior framework. And I'm not going to walk through each of these, but I do want to say to Chris's question earlier, these are some quotes from teachers, from paraprofessionals, from leaders that came directly from feedback on some of these learning sessions that were provided. And what our team is doing different than what we've done before, I can administer a survey and I can look and see did people like it or not like it. But until we start unpacking the nuances of what's being said, we won't improve. We won't get better. In each of these, you see a small nugget of information that helps us get better. Like, I would love to have short professional learning that was just in time and that I can come back to at a later time. That would be like a learning cycle. So we're asking ourselves how we're embedding learning cycles. I see from a new teacher, some of the most impactful learning is when I got to collaborate with my team. So we've got to make sure that our structures give collaboration time. I'm not just talking at people. I'm learning great de-escalation strategies. So I shared these to say, we're trying to look beyond just one percentage that tells us how we're doing, but what's embedded within the language of what participants are telling us. And the highlights that I will say that we're getting from all the feedback and data is that we are seeing in choice sessions that attendance is higher, that feedback is more positive. When somebody chose to take part in that session, it was more aligned to what I need. We are growing and putting embedded learning cycles in place. Is it still needed significant growth? Absolutely. But we see higher response rates on the positive end when there's some sort of cycle embedded and people are asking for it. Want to highlight again that we are aligning our learning to our guiding beliefs and using data-informed practices as we are developing professional learning. We have lots of opportunities to grow. Increasing just-in-time choice learning with follow-up support. We get praises around it, so we need to put more of that in place. Access for all continues to be a challenge for us. We do have opportunities for every employee to engage, but we want to make sure that at all times, regardless of what role you serve in our district, if you need learning, that you know how to access it and you think it's okay to do that. That's part of our culture. And that means we have to provide clarity on our system. And then the supports for our new to profession and new to BISD learning continue to be areas that we need to strengthen and support. You brought up some ask related to new teacher learning. In the fall next year, we will have a new teacher academy. And one of the core components of that is teachers getting learning around foundations of classroom management and relationships and leaving with a classroom management plan developed before they ever set foot in their classroom. Do have a 93% there because we've asked the same questions on all of our professional learning, and those that are choosing learning are showing at a higher rate satisfaction and feeling that this is supporting them with their growth and development in their roles.
So we're not going to really have time today to get into that second key progress measure. We can come back and highlight. I know we did a presentation with y'all. You know that we were able to collect some data around participation. It was, self-reported from campuses, and from that data, we identified students that we were struggling to find a connection to extracurricular participation, and so every campus participated in doing some focus groups with students, and out of that focus group were the barriers that we identified. And so we'll come back to you and talk to you again about the next steps we're taking in terms of attacking some of those barriers. But big picture, it was around transportation challenges for our students that are dependent on that. Part of it's around having more voice in those clubs and organizations. Maybe there aren't some that are really of interest to me, and so a desire to participate in some kind of a survey or something to give my campus feedback on what would be interesting to me as a student. Stipends for teachers in doing those clubs and organizations. So those are some of the primary barriers, and we'll be able to follow back up with you on that. I know we have one final minute, and just want to say thank you to Mike and Gabby and team. We're not sitting here saying that everything is perfect and we have figured out classroom management and student discipline. But there's a lot of effort going into really listening to the feedback from our teachers and really focusing on some preventative strategies, some reactive strategies. The addition of those three behavior coaches, for some, it's worked exceptionally well. For others, it didn't necessarily fix their problem. And so we're just continuing to monitor and see how can we make that process better. So just really appreciate Mike and Gabby for their leadership in this work.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our workshop this evening. There being no further business, we are adjourned at 6 p.m.